compulsiveness and retentiveness. So this whole idea of anality starts to shape up. Erikson brings up in not only that publication, but in many other pieces that he wrote, this whole idea of the anal character, which was described by Freud, but also by Carl Abraham for character pathology. So right here, you know, this whole idea of anal retentiveness starts taking a pathological feature, because they start talking about it as if it were a disease, actually. So, for example, in 1943, when Erikson is talking about it, he says compulsiveness, suspiciousness, miserliness, etc., are said to characterize anal neurotic individuals with an infantile history of preoccupation with excretion, with a narcissistic holding on to the treasures of the cloaca, and with a sadistic identification of other individuals with an expelled waste product, a sad asocial picture. And it only gets worse.
Yeah. He's pretty bad on the Sioux as well, by the way.
On the
Sioux, because it was all oral aggression. And it was compensation neurosis. It was, the Sioux never got over the loss of the buffalo. And, you know, so all the sundowns, everything was all this, aggression turned inward.
And,
so
and then,
whether it's oral aggression or anal aggression, it's all about aggression, loss, disordered mourning, and compensation neurosis. Because everything, after all, had been taken away from them.
But then jumping to some conclusions about, for example, the Sioux' mistrust of government officials was due to this oral aggression. So then you start creating all these associations between anality and morality and what's going on around them. So then, as I mentioned, in 1948, Kroeber added this chapter, Cultural Psychology, to the 1923 edition of Anthropology, and especially focusing on how child-rearing practices, especially the fact that Yurok women weaned their kids at an early age, around 8-9 months, produced the Yurok adult character. And then he went on to advance this other idea of the Yurok modal personality, which would then help determine relations of parents and their children, and came to the conclusion that because of this modal anal personality, Yurok mothers were unfit to raise their kids.
What's the context of that last sentence then? Is that, did he qualify that, or was that in a larger argument, or was that his conclusion?
That was one of his conclusions. And he wrote this in many different ways. Either they were negligent towards their kids, and he gives many, many examples. For example, when a Yurok woman is pregnant, she rubs her bad belly, and when he asks her, why are you rubbing the belly? Oh, so that when my child is born, it'll get up on its feet and walk quickly. And then early weaning and other practices that he thought showed that Yurok children were unwanted. Let me just check something. No, because I was going to bring something up and I wasn't sure whether I had said it later. So because he raised the fact that Yurok mothers are unfit to raise their kids, and this was 1948, but the first half of the Yurok of the 20th century, a lot of kids were taken away from their homes and put in foster cares. So Yurok, even though I didn't go after this documentation, a lot of Yurok women still claim today that Kroeber's and Erikson's publications about Yurok women being unfit to raise their kids were used in court to take children away from their mothers. So because of that and other traits of Yurok personality that they're raised, this incredible hostility developed against anthropologists in general. And here you have, so after Kroeber confirmed that Yurok anality was a fact, then you have a lot of psychoanalysts and social historians using the theory of Yurok anality to contest even other ideas, as you'll see. So for example, Geza Roheim in Psychoanalysis and Anthropology starts talking about, the big field using Yurok women who are unfit to raise their kids as examples of something much bigger that he's proposing. So he says Yurok women are not exactly good mothers. First postnatal period, 10 days during which the baby is not breastfed but given a kind of nut soup. Yurok child is encouraged to leave the mother's breast. Certainly it seems evident that babies are unwanted and mothers are pushing them away. The most stingy of all human beings, that is what I would call the Yurok. So, and this is sort of, a quick search for Yurok anality, and all of these publications pop up. S.H. Kosinski, an anthropologist, in 1957 published on the problem of Yurok anality, relying exclusively on Kroeber and Erickson, but then already taking it as a fact. The problem of Yurok anality has considerable theoretical interest, both for psychoanalysis and anthropology. Anal retentivity is the dominant theme. As Roheim indicated, confirmed by Birmingham, there is a danger of emptiness and a comparable danger of fullness, which place the Yurok in an unstable psychic balance. Anal sadness. And it doesn't stop. And then in 1959, 1 year before his death, Kroeber, his last publication about the Yurok, confirms again the Yurok national character in terms of anality, and says, and he thanks Erickson, a psychoanalyst with extraordinary perceptiveness, whose imaginative comparison of the Yurok concepts of the body, its orifices in food, of houses and sweat houses and their doors is stimulating and illuminating. So this was his last publication on the Yurok. However, others, such as Goldschmidt himself, had used the theory of Yurok anality to refute Max Weber's thesis on Protestantism and capitalism. So you see that this is getting completely out of control and it's everywhere. Okay, so then what happens is, at the same time that all these theories and concepts were being advanced, you have Yurok women writing about what's going on from their point of view.
Could I just make one little point, because I knew Erik Erikson and his study. Many of it is here. If anyone is interested, Jean McFarland was the first PhD in anthropology, first PhD in the social sciences, in psychology, and they had a Human Development Institute. So a lot of the materials from this 5-day episode and all of this equality after that is there. Jean McFarland, before she died, I had several meetings with her. Brilliant woman. And here's what she said about Erik Erikson. She said he was absolutely one of the most brilliant artists you would ever know. He was not a social scientist. He was an artist. He saw things in patterns. He saw things in color. He saw things in design. And she gave an example. She said, but sometimes he erred in terms of applying his beautiful perceptual apparatus that he had to data. So, for example, there's a famous article written by Erik Erikson called Inner and Outer Spaces, a reflection on, I think it's on gender or womanhood, based on children's play here in the, what now is Tolman Hall, where children would come in, and these were a longitudinal study of a cohort of Berkeley and East Bay children. Goes on for years and years after Erickson's dead, after Jean McFarland's dead. They tried to recruit me into it. I said, no, I don't do that kind of thing anymore. They took pictures of children, they played with them, they took medical tests, they measured their heads, they did everything. But she said, when I was talking about this article of Inner and Outer Spaces and saying, yes, I found it a very creative piece, she said, yes, but you don't know how he did it. Because he had children come and they gave them playthings, characters, blocks, cars, whatever, and separated the boys from the girls. And the boys, according to Erik Erikson, would project their external genitalia into their play. And so the boys built high towers, and also they had